It is Monday, May 28th, 2018, and this is the Monday Morning Analyst. Welcome, everyone. My name is Luke Thomas. I'm the host of this podcast. Thank you so much for watching. And, of course, if you are watching on today, happy Memorial Day. So I really appreciate your time here today. And, of course, it's a somber but important occasion here in the United States. Nevertheless, there was an occasion outside of the United States. UFC Liverpool took place over the weekend, and there was some not-so-great fights, some good fights as well. But in that main event, Darren Till defeating Stephen Wonderboy Thompson via unanimous decision. Was the decision correct? What's the best way to look at it? I'm not sure I have all the answers, but there are some things I think we should go over in terms of how to score, why does it matter, what did they do, and a few other things. So what's the real lesson in the judgment call about Till over Wonderboy? Let's talk more about it. A couple of things I want to note to start, I think, is first, I made a statement on Twitter that got a little bit of pushback, not a ton, but some, when I noted that whatever your thoughts on the fight, I don't know how you can look at this and say Darren Till isn't a significantly different fighter, right? Because some of the arguments against him going into this, either by critics or even, fair observers, was that, well, look, the Cerrone win was nice, but he'd been off for a while, and prior to that, who did he really beat in the UFC that could tell you he could even hang with Wonderboy? And if you wanted to compare their bodies of work prior to this contest, there wasn't much of a comparison you could make. But one of my major beliefs was that a guy who's like 25, who is rapidly improving and has a sense of it, you're going to see that fight over fight. So the skepticism heading into this fight about his upside, I think, is warranted. And coming out, there's still some other things you can hold on to. It's not like he's a perfect fighter, had a perfect performance, far from it. But one of my major takeaways was that, he went 5 rounds with Wonderboy, arguably beat him, depending on your perspective, but certainly hung in there. Didn't get blown out by any stretch of the imagination. And maybe it was a low-volume output affair, but it was that way on both sides. Both guys kind of negated each other. I'm sorry. One of the major takeaways here is whatever you want to say about Darren Till on the negative side, and there are plenty of things you can say. On the positive side, it's just a fact. He's gotten way, way, way better. His sense of distance is really good. His timing is really good. He's got limited, I think, offensive weapons relative to somebody like Wonderboy, but nevertheless has just so much more awareness of physical space and how to implement his game in that space than he ever had before. I understand the criticisms of him, but you got to give credit where credit is due. He is a much better fighter than the guy who fought, Nicholas Dalby or even prior to that. This guy is on his way. How far he can go? Well, that's up for debate. Now, in real time, I wasn't exactly scoring hardcore, but my thought was after it was over that it was pretty close fight, but I thought Wonderboy edged it out. But here's what I will say. Wonderboy was ranked number 1 and Till was ranked number 8 heading into this contest. Again, whether you are on Team Wonderboy or Team Till, whatever side you're on, you have to kind of admit this is probably good for that welterweight division. I don't know what's going to happen with RDA Covington. Certainly Usman's win over Maia wasn't, it was a hard-fought win, but it wasn't the most inspiring win ever. Same with this one. So to me, the fight that always made sense from the get-go was Usman versus Till. I think you make that, but neither here nor there. The point being is I think this is good for the welterweight division, that you've got some of that turnover happening, right? The guys from the bottom pushing up and coming up, rather, and then pushing out some of those older guys. You want that turnover, and you really needed it here, especially with Wonderboy losing twice to Tyron Woodley, then beating Jorge Masvidal, and then holding on to that number 1 position. The rankings are so bad that they're putting the division in a position where it can't improve itself unless people just really rise up the ranks and push other people down. But you're getting some of that, whether by hook or by crook. So in that sense, another positive development coming out of Saturday. Now let's get to this scoring here. One of the things that I saw was, look, if you scored it for a Wonderboy, I think you can make an argument for it. Again, in real time, that was kind of how I saw it. I saw it as, again, narrow but leading to a Wonderboy. I saw some folks say narrow but leading towards Till. Okay, I thought 4 rounds to 1 for Till was not a very acceptable scorecard, but as we've discussed on this podcast many times, the nature of judging is so subjective and the criteria is so open, and such little is done in terms of the revision of the process over time that in any case where it's close like this, you're just going to court disaster at times, or at least court controversy. And I think that's what we have here. It's really impossible to complain. The subjectivity of someone's own criteria, whether it is conscious or whether they are conscious of it or not, their position in the cage, what they heard, what they felt, what mattered to them. how they understood their role, how they implemented the scoring criteria. All of these things can play a role over time. So to me, the fact that it went one way or the other is not all that surprising, although the 4-1 is a little bit hard to square. But there were some things that happened after the fight that I really thought deserved some review. The major one that I thought was really, really bad was that people were going around to various figures who have some authority here, right? Big John McCarthy was one, who clearly one of the best referees, if not the best referee in the history of mixed martial arts, has judged before, has helped, I believe, in the development of the criteria, at least on some nascent stage in the development of mixed martial arts. I mean, we're talking about somebody who knows what the scoring criteria is all about and how it should be implemented. He thought Wonderboy won the first 3 rounds without much controversy. And again, we can debate some of that here in just a second, but people were then responding to him by, well, look at these stats, and I'm going to put the stats up here on the screen. And what do the stats tell us? Well, they tell us a few things. One, it was a close fight. You can already see that. In, I believe, 3 of the rounds, there was only a 1-strike landed differential. So you look at rounds 1, rounds 3, and 4, the only thing separating them was 1 strike. Not only does that tell you that it's close, but that then tells you that you probably want to go back and look at some of those rounds to see what strikes those were. And of course, some other things you can glean from this. Wonderboy spread out his offense over the course of the head, body, and leg a little bit more diversely than Darren Till did, but neither here nor there. And of course, all the strikes really landed for the most part on either guy at distance, Till getting a little bit more done in the clinch. Now, if you watch this podcast, you know as well as I do that I love the use of statistics. But I thought just responding with this, where it would show you that Till landed more overall as some kind of like mic drop, is a really bad argument. A really, really, really bad argument. At a bare minimum, it's totally insufficient. It's like saying to somebody, I'm going to build a wall in your backyard, right? You need a wall to keep out vagrants or just to finish construction, and pointing to a pile of bricks and saying, game over. Well, you need a lot more than that to build a wall. You need somebody who knows how to build a wall. You need manpower hours. You need to find something to put the bricks together. You can't just stack them on there. You might need a permit. Do you know how to go get a permit to do some kinds of construction yard? Like, there's many steps beyond just pointing at a stack of bricks and saying the wall's done. No, it's a component. It's a very important component, but it's really not much of an argument. It's just one of the foundational models. Here is how statistics should be used in MMA, in my judgment. It's almost impossible to use statistics by itself. Here's why. They're just so context-free. Now, that's true of many statistics, but there is advanced modeling and there's advanced statistics in other sports where if you look at basketball, you can have, the sport has been around for much longer. There's a lot to measure, right? Think of all the time somebody scores or somebody rebounds or somebody does something, and you can tick off every single one of those, and you can put it together by position, you can put it together by era, by series, by playoff. I mean, there's so many different ways and variables you can measure, and there's so much data to work with. In this case, look at how limited the data is, right? First of all, we're just talking about one fight. We're not talking about, for example, I've talked about how Khabib's measurement in one fight measured up against his historical norms. Well, in that case, you're looking at his overall body of work, right? There's averages built in and medians and means and much more data to chew on. Here, you just have single digit per round numbers. This is a very small sample. So looking at that sample in actual visual representation, not graphic ones, but actually looking at the footage itself is absolutely critical here, because simply saying Wonderboy landed 4 strikes to Till's 5 strikes to 4 in round 1, tells you very little. Okay, he landed 1 more strike. Well, what kind of strikes? Did any of them knock him down? Did they not knock him down? Were they just slaps on the leg? Were they body shots? Were they uppercuts? Did they stagger him at any point? Did they bloody his nose? Did they close his eye? Did he react physically in some kind of way? Either way, what happened here? You can land 100 punches, and if I land that, Ngannou death hand, what does it matter what the strike differential is? So you really need to be very, very careful about that. It's one thing to say I'm going to go look at a body of work, right? And go look at a body of different measurements and different variables and historical norms. That's one thing. Even that would be incomplete. It's quite another to go to look at one fight. It's quite yet another thing to go look at one fight with very low output. If you have a fight that, even if it goes long, has very low output, and you're just looking at the numbers in that fight, it is a must. It is a must that you look at the visual representation as well. You must go look at the footage. This is not unimportant, but by itself is totally incomplete. It merely paints a picture that maybe Till did a little bit better than some people had thought at the outset of the decision. But is that really true? You need to go and look at the footage. If you went around and you just said, mic drop, here's the numbers on a one fight that has very low output, and you're talking about round-by-round measurement, so in certain cases, a total of single-digit strikes in that first round that landed, 9 total between the two competitors, you are simply outing yourself as incapable of making a much more broader and important argument, and frankly, a convincing one. You want a convincing argument in MMA? Look at the numbers. Absolutely. What do they tell you? What kind of picture maybe do they paint? But the old Reagan mantra, right? Trust but verify. You must go verify this because it may not be at all what you think it is. That can be true not merely for a single individual fight, but even a body of work. Oh, someone has 100% takedown defense. Well, what if they fought all strikers? You must go look at all of these things. You must cross-reference it with a number of other measurements. Simply looking at arithmetic tallies in a single fight, in a single round, not enough. Not even close to being enough. That's not even the pile of bricks. That's just a permit, and you haven't even bought anything to go build aforementioned brick wall. Very, 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 very incomplete argument. So I went back and I looked at this fight, and what did I find out? You may not agree with some of this, but just work with me for the purpose of this exercise, please. Right? Here's how I saw it. Round 5, Till drops him. Clear 10-9 round for Till. You go back to round 1. Now, that was, again, one of 3 rounds that only had a single strike differential between them, in this case favoring Wonderboy, although he did attempt more. He attempted 18-12, which may matter a little bit as well, but nevertheless, he landed more. I saw that one for him, right? So 1st and 5th, kind of a wash. The ones that matter are rounds 2, 3, and 4. Now, there's debate over what I'm about to say, but just please follow me for a second. I'm going to give round 2 to Darren Till. Darren Till had 9 strikes land to Wonderboy's 6. And you might say, well, Luke, what do the context of those things mean? Would the 6 better? You can debate this, but for the purpose of this exercise, let's just say Till won that one. So now you have 2 rounds to Till, 2 and 5, and you have 1 to Wonderboy rounds 1. You go to round 3. Till outstruck him in terms of arithmetic totals, 9-8, and even had a higher output attempted. But let's just say for a second, and you may not agree, just follow me for a second because there's a purpose to all of this. Let's say Wonderboy won that one. So now we're even. Rounds 1 and 3, you have Wonderboy. Rounds 2 and 5, clearly 5, of course, for Till. So what does that tell us? That comes down to round 4. Round 4, it may or may not be in your mind, but I'm trying to go through an exercise here. Let's assume all the things I've said, just for the purposes of this exercise, is true. So round 4 is really your deciding round. I want to watch round 4 with you. Let's talk through it, see what we see, and then we're going to go through the judging criteria, the scoring criteria, to see what kind of results we can come to and what lessons there might be, both in terms of how this fight was judged, how the data matters, how it doesn't, and what we can say about it. Let's take a look. All right, we're at the start of this, and you can see just as well as I can, we're going to walk through this. All right. Let's see if what strikes matter. We don't have the audio, which can matter, by the way. Big punch there by Wonderboy. So first hard strike is his. Some kind of body kick from him there as well, right? All right. Till sort of pushing into him. And you can't ignore cage control. You can't ignore aggression, but we'll get to that in a little bit here. So maybe that knee from the body there kind of landed, right? I still would give, so far, 30 seconds in, looks like Wonderboy did some of the better work, but okay, it's evened up a little bit, right? Nice little punch there, but he got kind of out of the way, Till did. All right. Or he rolled with it anyway, right? Some of these guys landed, but they were leaning when they rolled with it, when they were thrown, so it didn't impact fully. Sort of low leg kick there from Wonderboy. All right, Wonderboy sort of moving out there clockwise. in the orthodox position. We're down a minute. All right. A lot of inactivity here. Look how much time is spent doing nothing. He throws a shot there from the right-handed side, and both guys miss there. This is what I mean. There's just not much output. That one landed, but he rolled with it a little bit, so that was kind of a wash between them. Wonderboy misses there. All right. Blocked kick. Darren Till doing that sort of like bouncing lead leg. Let's see. Yeah, really the story of this fight was how much these two negated each other, as you can see. Wonderboy trying to find the angle. Missed jab there from Till. Okay, inside kick there from Till. There, my one misses. Sort of a jab that lands there from Wonderboy. Flat on his feet. Okay, we're over halfway done. That left hand from Wonderboy kind of strafes him there, so that counts a little bit. We're watching. Left hand comes over the top, but it doesn't really land there for Wonderboy. They clinch up. I don't think anything really landed there. Ain't nothing clean anyway. Let's see if something happens here on the clinch break. That'll be kind of important to watch as they separate. Yep, elbow over the top. Halfway landed, but decent for Till. I'm not sure exactly what happened there. Body kick again for Wonderboy. Wonderboy misses, tries a follow-up side kick, but not a whole lot on it. So we're down to less than 90 seconds. Just so little activity in terms of volume. So he tries to set up there and misses. Good lateral movement from Wonderboy. Wonderboy, by the way, recapturing center. He did that a lot in this fight. Of course, he gave it back up again to like retreat. Double jab there from Till landed a little bit. Misses there with a right-handed hook. Body shot from Wonderboy. He landed one of those in the first round that was really hard, so that was not as good, but same kind of punch. Calf kick. Not a very hard one, but less than 30 seconds. Here we go. Another sort of small inside leg kick. Misses with the 1-2, Wonderboy does. Here comes Till, less than 10 seconds. Tries it, he rolled with it. It landed a little bit, I'll give him credit. And then there was this confusing moment from Mark Goddard signaling the 10-second mark. Okay, round's over. All right, what can we say about that? I've got a few things. So there was your fourth round. Now let's go back to the numbers. Actually, just a second. Let's say what we saw there. To me, you had Till landing a couple of things. That nice elbow in the clinch wasn't too bad. Most of the time when guys landed on either of each other, a lot of it was blocked. A lot of it, both guys able to roll with it. So even if it landed, the impact was significantly reduced. You notice neither guy got dropped in this round. Neither guy got cut in this round. Neither guy got really bruised in this round, although there was some bruising from the accumulated damage on the leg of Wonderboy. But some guys bruise easier than others. And also Darren Till probably kicks really hard. Point being was, there just wasn't really much of a whole lot on either side of those guys. In fact, when I look at this, I say to myself, there's two, I think, reasonable conclusions you can draw here. One is that maybe you want to give it to Wonderboy, I thought he did some decent work to the body, landed a couple of those body kicks, that one body shot. He was a little more active with the leg kicks. He was a little more active with the head hunting, but some of that was just not all there. But at least he was relatively successful in some of those regards. I think the other one you can say is, well, maybe not. Maybe it was just kind of even. In going back and looking at that, I think judging that in terms of the damage on either side being relatively equal would have been okay by me. So if you want to go Wonderboy, cool. If you want to go even, I'd be cool with that too. But I don't know if there's an argument to make for Darren Till, and that's what's kind of funny. Let's go to the numbers. You look at the numbers on round 4. There's only a 1-strike differential in Wonderboy Thompson's favor. So that would sort of stand to reason, wouldn't it, right? It'd stand to tell you that it was something along the lines where maybe one guy had an advantage. But I'm guessing some of you wouldn't agree with that. Some of you might say, well, maybe Till's punches landed more. Maybe some of those things where he had him running away mattered more. Or what some of you might be doing is something that I saw a lot of, which is, okay, well, let's say the damage was either a wash or let's say that maybe Till has a slight advantage. So what, Luke? So what? What about the arguments about cage control and effective aggression? Okay, so this is one of the biggest problems that we have here with this contest, and we have it all the time. Here is how judging works, at least if you're going by the new rules, which the UFC is supposed to be doing when they self-regulate overseas. It goes like this. Effective aggression and cage control don't matter at all unless the striking is considered to be dead even. Consider the rules here. This is how it was initially proposed and more or less adopted by the Association of Boxing Commissions. Number 1, criteria may not be mixed and matched to assess a result. It has to go in order. So in order, the number 1 thing is effective striking and grappling. And effective striking is judged by determining the impact of damage of legal strikes landed by a contestant solely based on the results of such legal strikes. Effective grappling is assessed by the successful executions and impact of the damaging result coming from takedowns, submission attempts, blah, blah, blah. But we don't have that in this contest. Top and bottom position fighters are assessed more on impact and damage result of their blah, blah, blah. The criterion will be deciding factor in a high majority of decisions when scoring a round. The next 2 criteria must be treated as a backup plan and used only when effective striking and grappling is 100% equal for the round. So, here's the way this goes. One of 2 possibilities, I guess 3 if you want to say Till won those in that one round, although I don't see much of an argument for it. But I know what some folks might say. They might say, well, let's say it's even or relatively close. You know, we're talking about a very, very, very narrow margin between the 2. Then you have to go down the criteria. The way it works would be if you thought that the damage was equal on both sides, and I'd be open to that argument, only then do you drop down to effective aggressiveness, which, by the way, means aggressively making attempts to finish the fight. The key term here is effective. Chasing around an opponent with no result, impact, or damage should not render in the judge's assessments. Effective aggressiveness is only to be assessed if effective striking and grappling is 100% equal for both competitors. Here's what I would say about the effectiveness of effective aggressiveness. Number 1, you are only considering this if you thought the damage was equal. So assuming you thought the damage was equal in that round, then you drop down. To me, on that one, some might say Till, some might say Wonderboy. I actually think it was relatively even because you had Till narrowing into him, but I don't know that the key term here is effective, chasing around an opponent with no result, impact, or damage. I mean, he didn't get no result, but he had very, very little result. And was he aggressively making attempts to finish the fight? I didn't necessarily see that either. On the same side, Wonderboy doing a lot of retreating, but only to collapse back into him when he would overcommit positionally. So it was a bit of a cat and mouse game intentionally on both sides. You could maybe make an argument in that favor towards Darren Till, but it would be very, very hard to do so. I don't know that the positioning that he was able to arrive at netted him a lot of positive impact. And he wasn't running from a constantly retreating position. I went back and noted, and you can go back and look at the round, how many times did you see Wonderboy make lateral movement? Yes, but then circle back to the center of the cage, circle back to the center of the cage, or wait till Till came at him and then tried to strike. But assuming you think all of those things are equal, then and only then do you go to fighting area or cage control. Fighting area control is assessed by determining who is dictating the pace, place, and position of the bout. I would lean that direction. If I was thinking about it, I might lean a little bit in that sense towards Till, because yes, it is a cat and mouse game, but there is also just more retreating being done by Wonderboy that has nothing to do necessarily with trying to collapse that space so he can counter him. Some of it was just simply evasive. In fact, one of the big punches that Wonderboy evaded, or at least rolled with, came from this sort of collapsing moment that Till had. I would lean to that area with Till. So what does that tell us? What does that tell us? It tells us that simply looking at the numbers is totally insufficient. Because there is a way to arrive at a Darren Till fourth round by looking at this and saying, well, there was relatively even in the striking. I don't know that I can say that Wonderboy did better. I think he did, but I can see based on a judge's position from where they were sitting, maybe some of that stuff was hard to see. Maybe it didn't look like it landed all that much. So then you drop down to the criteria, effective aggressiveness. I mean, maybe you could lean Till in that direction, but let's say you even thought that was even. Then you drop down to fighting area control. Even then, was Wonderboy controlling that? No, you could go towards Darren Till. So this is my point. You might be right that Till deserves a second look on some of those scorecards, but you're not right by simply dropping a number down. The process matters here. The numbers barely, but they favored Wonderboy. But some of the other criteria, if you follow it along, depending on your perspective, can get you to the other side. This is the problem, not merely when you have a close fight. Let's say 25 strikes landed to 26 strikes landed. But when you have a close fight where very little output is there, we're talking 8 strikes versus 9 strikes in that fourth round. There is almost no information by which you can make a clean-cut, hardcore decision. Simply posting up numbers and saying argument over, if that was true, then you would be conceding that round to Wonderboy when maybe you could make an argument for Till. It really would all depend on your perspective. If a fight gets this close, 1 strike differential, cat and mouse game, opposing styles, no one got dropped, no one got cut, no one got hurt, that we can tell anyway, no one really affected change. You have to look at the complete and total picture, and you have to know how the scoring criteria works. You start at the top. If and only if everything is even, you drop to the next one. And if and only if all of that is even, you drop to the next one. And by the way, you could even go to fighting area control if you wanted to and still arrive, in my judgment, at a 10-10 round if you wanted to. You could still do that. So really, this fight could have been a draw. Round 1, Wonderboy. 2, Till. Round 3, Wonderboy. Round 4, draw. Round 5, Till. Draw. I'd have been okay with that too. Here's what I'm trying to tell you. I will be willing to listen to many scorecards. The 4-1 is a little hard to arrive at for me. I've tried it a bunch of different ways. I can't get it. But here's what I can abide by. Good scoring based on what the stats tell us. And, of course, in real time, they don't have access to those, so it can be a little bit harder. But after the fact, I think it's an important exercise to include them, right? An assessment of the scoring criteria properly implemented. You can arrive at some interesting scorecards, but simply going and pointing at the tally arithmetically in one fight with super low totals, not a very helpful exercise. Not a very helpful exercise at all. Don't do it. It's not helpful. I don't think I'm going to change anybody's opinion about how this should be scored. If you think Till won, what am I going to say? If you think Wonderboy won, you're going to find reasons to think they won. I've said it before. You get a fight this close with that little output, any score is 4-1's a little hard to come by for Till. But 3-2 for him, it's not that hard to come by. I can find ways to do that. But what matters here is the process. What matters here is how you arrive at that. Do you have good reasons? Because if you have a good process, over time, that process will award the fight to a deserving contender in fights that really, really matter, where getting it right is really important. Simply saying after the fact, hey, look at these numbers, you are outing yourself as somebody incapable of participating in this debate in a meaningful way. And last but not least, we take a look at what's coming up in the week ahead. We have UFC Utica, or UFC, what number is this? Fight Night 131. This will be headlined by Jimmy Rivera taking on Marlon Moraes, of course, at the Adirondack Bank Center in Utica, New York. As I mentioned, your main event, Jimmy Rivera taking on Marlon Moraes in a bantamweight contest. Love that fight, right? Gregor Gillespie taking on Vince Pichel. Walt Harris versus Daniel Spitz. Jake Ellenberger versus Ben Saunders. Julio Arce versus Daniel Tamer. And then John Vellante versus Sam Alvey. You jump down to the Fox Sports 1 preliminary card. Sijara Eubanks versus Lauren Murphy. Nick Lentz versus David Tamer. I guess he's on that card twice somehow. Bilal Muhammad taking on Chance Raycountry. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Apologies. Desmond Green taking on Gleison Tebow. Jessica Aguilar versus Jody Esquibel will headline your Fight Pass portion of this. Johnny Eduardo taking on Nathaniel Wood. And then Jared Brooks versus Jose Torres. So Nathaniel Wood also an interesting addition to the UFC roster. So there you go. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What did you like? What did you hate? Shoot me an email. LukeThomasNews@gmail.com. By the way, Hala Madrid, and also Go Caps. Happy Memorial Day. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, enjoy the fights.